The Elias Pettersson situation in Vancouver has just gotten a lot more interesting. And in order to fully dive into the new talking points and angles that we have to take a little bit of a blast to the past. Ladies and gentlemen, do you remember Chris Higgins, a former Vancouver Canuck that was acquired by the team heading into their 2011 Stanley Cup final playoff run? A guy that spent a decent amount of time with the Vancouver Canucks as a player, and even more time with the Canucks organization as an assistant director of player development. Chris Higgins, a guy who once upon a time was a former top Montreal Canadiens prospect, has had a fair share of time in Vancouver. The Smithtown, New York, USA guy was noted for being one of the more handsome guys on the team and also having the best set of abs on the Vancouver Canucks as well. Yeah, that's right. In all the old Canucks videos from the 2010s and beyond, whenever there'd be some sort of a clip or a picture of guys without their shirts on, you would always see Chris Higgins and his beautiful abdominal section gracing the screen. But we're here on YouTube, so we're not going to show it off. Chris Higgins, of course, worked with the Vancouver Canucks from 2019 to 2024 after his playing days. So, when he goes on to Sportsnet 650 yesterday and starts talking about certain kinds of guys, it opens the door for us to really talk about Elias Pettersson. Take a look at the quote Chris Higgins on 650. You cannot teach a 6 to 7 year veteran to prepare better and put in the work. You trade those guys. It's not something you can fix. It's a character issue. Now, nowhere in this quote does Chris Higgins directly say that, oh, you gotta trade Pettersson. It's Elias Pettersson. That's the guy. No, he does not necessarily say that, but he does say you can't teach 6 to 7 year veterans to prepare better. What was the number one thing that Patrick Allvin and Rutherford were talking about in regards to Pettersson last year in November, October, and even further before that too? It was preparation. It was always Elias Pettersson needed to prepare more. He needed to come into camp better. He needed to do this. He needed to do that. Of course, we understand that Patrick Allvin wouldn't take any pushback on the idea that maybe Pettersson wasn't healthy enough, and that's why he wasn't able to train properly, but still, this narrative had been hammered down over the course of the past few months that Pettersson needed to prepare. And there are elements that you can say get in the way of that. I mean, there were reports that Pettersson gained a lot of weight last year as well. Not like bad weight, but he got bulkier, he got stronger, he had gained however many kilograms it was. Let's just see if we can Google that here. Pettersson kilograms, and then see if that popped up anywhere. Here it is. 8 months ago, Pettersson said he put on 6 kilos heading into the 25-26 season. Okay, that's great. But you could also debate that 6 kilos might be enough to really change the way somebody feels comfortable moving, and it adjusts your body in ways that you never really had to deal with before. So, who knows? Maybe it's the kilos, maybe it's the training, but whatever it is, Chris Higgins is saying you cannot teach these 6 to 7 year guys to prepare better. You trade them. You can't fix it. It's a character issue. Guess how many years Elias Pettersson has been playing for the Vancouver Canucks? Well, he just wrapped up his, 9th year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 8 years. And then he'll be entering his 9th year this upcoming season, which is kind of ridiculous now that you think about it. And some of the replies go out there and say, Demko's Kneebone says, I have a hunch the Sedins probably feel the same way about Pettersson. With Hansen and Higgins coming out publicly criticizing Pettersson without any ties to working for the same team he is on, it's obvious to me EP40 will be shipped out after next season if he doesn't show up again. Now, this is just an opinion, but this is pretty factual. Jannik Hansen has been on Sportsnet 650 over the past year and a half, essentially, talking about how Elias Pettersson has totally lost it. Chris Higgins, another former Vancouver Canuck on that 2011 team, is essentially alluding to the same ideas. And with the fact that it's already been documented Elias Pettersson hasn't really had that relationship with the Sedins, you can debate that that's a very realistic outcome to the situation here, too. Brady went out there and posted this on Twitter, coming from someone who worked in the Canucks organization. We can't be having the same conversation nearly every offseason about Pettersson. For how long now? The guy turns 28 in November, going into his 9th season. Nuck Zero went out there and posted the actual clip. Higgins, former Canucks development staff, implying that Canucks forward Elias Pettersson has character issues and that it's time to get rid of guys like that. Bruff has been reporting for the last few years that the Sedins and Pettersson do not have a good relationship. Pettersson never seeked out a relationship with the Twins like others have. I wouldn't be shocked if he's moved out sooner rather than later. Now, I don't want to all just start ganging up on Elias Pettersson, but when you look at the various interviews and comments that were made through various capacities over the years, it does form a pretty convenient narrative, doesn't it? Like, oh yeah, there are so many members of this 2011 Vancouver Canucks team, from Higgins to Jannik Hansen to the Sedins, of course, that have all documented opinions about players and whatnot and have expressed some form or another, either a needing for Elias Pettersson to be better or just a straight-up dismissal of his talent. For the Sedins, they said in their press conference the same thing with Ryan Johnson. They want Pettersson to have a clean slate. Obviously, they understand that he hasn't been as good as he should be. But when you look at just some of the other opinions getting tossed out there, and when one former Canucks staff member says that you got to trade guys that aren't able to prepare properly, it really does open the possibility as to an Elias Pettersson trade in the short term, if you don't want to go out there and say that it's going to happen next year or something like that. Now, speaking about Elias Pettersson, there are some other opinions that have been tossed out there about him too. Jay Rosehill went out there and posted this on Twitter, kind of an aside conversation, but he used to be an NHL player, of course, with the Leafs and the Flyers. I remember another player being highly touted coming out of the Swedish league. Elias something or another? And then Jay Fresh went out there and said this: it's cool that Elias Pettersson scored at a 34-goal, 83-point pace over his first 6 years, including a 100-point season, and we've retconned him into having been a bust the entire time. Obviously, Jay Fresh is defending Pettersson here, saying that, hey, once upon a time he actually was really good, and now the past 2 seasons have really changed the way that we think about this guy, not ever believing that he was ever that talented to begin with. And that's not necessarily wrong, but at the same time, I think hope has been lost for many Canucks fans. For Chris Higgins, it seems, other people around the organization and in this fan base, as to whether or not Pettersson can really bounce back and get back to the highs that Jay Fresh indicates Pettersson was at in previous times during his career. Now, for what it's worth, we understand that Pettersson is a quiet guy. He is not necessarily the most outspoken, and he doesn't really seem all too comfortable doing media. But at the end of the day, he is one of the best players on the Canucks, and with Henrik and Daniel Sedin coming into the organization saying, yeah, we want to focus on having our leaders be the best players, and our best players be the leaders, it does get me thinking whether or not Elias Pettersson does fit with that vision of what the Sedins want for this team and how they want the leadership core to fully establish themselves as people in the community and on the ice. So that's another element about it as well. That's totally external, though. I'm not too sure how that's going to apply over the next few months, but I guess we'll see, and we'll keep an eye out on the grapevine to see if other people go out there and say stuff that indicates whether or not Elias Pettersson should be, would be, or could be traded. So with that said, let me know in the comments, do you remember Chris Higgins as a Vancouver Canuck, and what are your thoughts on his commentary over here that some forwards, some players, some 6 to 7 year veterans could potentially have some character issues and that it's time to get rid of guys like that? Is he talking about Pettersson? What do you think? Let me know in the comments all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.